Hi, West Texas, and welcome into another episode of our VCast series Chat with the Chief. I'm Burt Sempier, and I'm joined by none other than San Angelo Police Chief Travis Griffith. Chief, it's been a couple of weeks. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. It's always a blessing to be here.
It's always great to have you, and we've built this friendship and relationship, and I really feel like we get some important topics across to the residents of the city.
Yeah, and it's just a fun time for us to be able to see, the citizens get to see both me behind, not being the police chief, and you kind of behind the scenes too, because all I see is on the TV.
The man behind the badge.
Yeah, and the man in the camera.
Yes, that's true. All right, so let's get started. I want to start with a story that has really gripped the minds of a lot of residents here, and it's not often that I refer to my notes, but I want to make sure I have the facts straight, and if at any point something is wrong, please let me know.
Sure.
So in late January, you had announced the findings of your internal investigation when it came to finding out how a firearm had ended up in the hands of a man who was caught trying to get into Mexico. One of the firearms on him was traced back to the SAPD.
Yes, sir.
And through the investigation, it turns out that 3 officers, one of which is now retired, was involved in not only this firearm, but a few others going missing. 4 in total, 2 are still reported stolen, and we assume are out there. When you were gathering these facts, was this kind of disheartening to learn what you were learning?
Oh, absolutely. And man, you did a great job of succinctly putting that together. It's almost like you do this for a living.
Oh, thank you.
So it is it's a frustrating, saddening, just about every emotion you can think of, because I know all these guys, and I don't think it takes away from the things that they've done that are good, but there's certain lines that get crossed and things that happen that there's consequences. And so this happened before I took office. All this investigation was ramping up before I swore in. I just had to deal with kind of the fallout in the back end of it. It's one of those situations that, as the chief and as the public is entrusted to me to make these decisions, to say, hey, who can we keep? Is there anybody salvageable? Who was responsible for what? And it's the toughest decision of my career, I can say. Yeah.
We know that from SAPD side, your investigation was looking into the civil side of things, where the Texas Rangers and maybe the Attorney General's office would look into the criminal side of things.
So the Texas Rangers were the primary investigative unit, if you will, of the entire criminal aspect. And so we run a parallel but very different, referred to as a civil investigation, but it's basically an internal investigation where we look for violations of law, but not for criminal investigation, and we look for violations of policy and procedure of the San Angelo Police Department. There's some reason for that. It's because of the government code that is voted on by the legislation put into play years and years ago, dealing with civil service employees and what that procedure looks like. And so that's why we have very, I'd say, rigorous guidelines on how we have to go about doing that. And so through that process, we looked for everything that's related to those particular areas.
Thinking out loud, I'm wondering if in this instance you or maybe another department, if they were in a similar situation, has to go with the civil side, because maybe it could be viewed as a conflict of interest. So-and-so maybe really enjoys this officer, or they're a family member and might look the other way.
So mainly is we want to show transparency. So we use the Texas Rangers because they're not a part of our department. They can be more involved in that without having the relationship aspect, like what you're talking about. So that's why we use that, and also just it gives another layer, so we can't be looked at as that we didn't do a thorough job or something like that. And then our internal civil investigation is done by our internal affairs, and so they go through and they look at where does this line up, how does this work. What's the violations? What level are they, and things like that.
And then just last point on this: 4 firearms in total were taken from the training, not department. What's the word I'm looking for? Training division We know the one was recovered and there's at least two still out there. I assume that's a very difficult task to try and track that down and find them even one day. Might be lucky.
Well, it depends. I mean, I would say the odds of recovery, vary. That we see cases where we have individuals, citizens' weapons that get stolen that people think would never come back, and they do. It's going to require that engagement to law enforcement, whatever that might be, traffic stop, an arrest, domestic, whatever it could be. If it ever gets checked, then they'll know. And so we are hopeful that we'll be able to get down to the bottom of it.
Let's move on to a more positive
Yeah.
story here. So later this month on February 25th, you and SAPD will be holding its Southwest Advisory meeting. By my count, this is at least the third meeting like this you have held. It'll be taking place at Sierra Vista United Methodist Church. What are you kind of hoping to get out of this meeting, and maybe what kind of concerns will maybe you be bringing up, or do you expect to be brought up?
Yeah, so every time we do one, we start off with a citywide crime update. So we kind of look at what have we seen in the last, usually we do like a month, or we might do a 6-month snapshot or something like that. This one we might try to incorporate where we first started. So we could do an 8-month, from crime update. And then we narrow it down to, this one's southwest, so what's going on in the southwest part of town, right? What are you seeing over there? What is College Hills and the Southland Division area, the whole area? What are you seeing over there? What kind of things are you running into? In particular, we've tried to reach out to a lot of our people that have been victims, because we want, number one, them to understand that we care about the process and give them an update. There's a lot of times that we're so busy in today's events that we don't see the good stuff that comes out. We've made about 6 or 7 arrests over the course of the last 4 months related to burglaries, and some of those burglaries came right out of that area. So kind of give them an update that we're not just been sitting around, not just been waiting, just because your case hadn't been solved, it's the most prevalent to you, but we're working through that. And then kind of give them the challenges that we're facing, to know what are we dealing with, what kind of hurdles do we have to overcome. So those type of situations, we're really trying to make sure that we're relaying to the public. We're finding staffing shortages already. On top of the shortages, we're already well below national and state averages how many officers we should have. Getting into support staff, we're below those numbers as well. So kind of talking about that stuff to be fair, not to offer excuses, because we'll still give 100% on everything we can do that we have leads on that we can work. So that's the kind of the consistency that we get from those. And then to let the public tell us, hey, what are you seeing in your neighborhoods? What would you like to see different? The feedback is pretty invaluable. We've seen anywhere from 80 people to 25 people, 30 people. So we'll see what this one brings.
A lot of times, and it's so cliche to say, community policing or police officers trying to build bridges with the community, all those cliche terms. How do you think these meetings have gone in terms of putting a face behind the badge with a community member, making sure that the community knows that Travis Griffith, yes, he is the chief of police, but he is a family man just like you and a resident of this city?
I hope that it's working. I mean, all we can do is wait to see kind of the metrics come back. But we try to bring in detectives and supervisors from different divisions. So let's say that you're having a problem in your neighborhood with somebody that you believe is selling drugs. We're going to have a representative from the narcotics division there, right? If you're having traffic issues, we try to have a representative from the traffic division there. So as soon as somebody brings up whatever issue's going on, to have them be able to talk to that officer in a one-on-one setting and not some kind of phone thing, that they can start trying to, right there in person, start building those relationships and seeing that they're just average people out here trying to do a job, and we care about this community and we want to see it done better. And it is a little bit more of a redneck statement, but we don't know what we don't know, right?
Right.
And so when you look at that, we're trying to look at this from a standpoint of trying to gather the facts and information of what we don't know by these meetings.
2 questions ago, you had brought up the staffing levels again, and I feel like we bring it up most times when we chat that one of your main goals after being sworn in as chief, actually through the race leading up to you being sworn in, was the importance of increasing the ranks
Yes,
of
sir.
SAPD. And you have just over a dozen cadets in the police academy right now. I asked you about them last time. How's it going with them?
We're still trucking along. Everything's looking good. We're excited about that. You know, we'd see sometime around October that they'd be out by themselves all the way. And so we're excited for that. We've hired, I think we're at 7 laterals that we've hired since then. So those laterals are people that are already certified law enforcement. That's been exciting for us. So, you know, we are actually, by the grace of God and a wonderful team, we're at 170 today, including our cadets, you know, that are not doing this, but we have people in training, people that we've hired. So that's huge. I mean, we went from the 150 marks to 170 in 8 months. Great. Can't say enough about Kelsey Hernandez, our recruiter. She's just done wonderful work, and John Bellini helping out in that area. We've also had a lot of officers go out there and recruit individuals, which is huge. And so we're seeing some movement there, and we're excited.
So if you are at 170 right now, what does that ideal number look like?
Well, so if you're talking about idea what we think we need to effectively run in San Angelo, we probably need to be somewhere around 200. You know,
Okay.
we could give or take on that, but you know, there's a lot of factors that goes into: are we staffing full-time positions into the schools? Are we just being, you know, just the police and nothing more in that regards? Because if we start trying to staff additional folks into the schools, then that takes away from what we have on the streets. Which we can do. It's just, what does that number look like? What's appropriate for us? How are we going to step into that? So that could be anywhere from 195, keeping things the way they are, up to 200 and 205, somewhere in that ballpark.
The fact that you've already gotten 7 lateral officers in during your time, do you think that maybe by word of mouth, word will start to spread about, hey, SAPD is a good place to work, the city is a great place to kind of keep a watchful eye over? Do you think you might even see more officers say, hey, I want to make a change, and I've heard good things about San Angelo?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that. I think just we're trying to cultivate an environment that is a family-based, but I mean, just realistically, that we take care of our people. I'm the kind of guy that believes in doing what I said I would do, right? You might not always have to agree with what I say, but if you know that if I say something, we're going to do it, that in itself is half the battle with any type of relationship, right? I think that when you see these common sense approaches, we're being real, we're working with the public, and we're realigning what we believe to be important, you know, putting the public first, and then very, very close second our officers, and trying to get equipment and find funding sources and work with the city. These are things that have been a challenge in the years past, right? And so we're doing that, I think, with a great new team that is leaps and bounds ahead of what I thought we would be right now. So I'm excited in that regards, that there is hope that we can actually lead the way in law enforcement and not lag, that we can stand up for what we know to be right, regardless of what the world might say, type thing, that we're gonna be honorable men and women and approach this in a way that is nothing that's going to do more than help solidify the place of the San Angelo Police Department in a respectable, professional manner.
There's always hope, Chief, and
Yeah.
to quote Andy Dufresne, hope is the best of things, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies.
Well, there you go.
I definitely butchered the quote, but hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies.
Yeah.
Speaking of relationships, I bring this up because obviously SAPD works with the Tom Green County Sheriff's Office,
yeah.
and over the past couple of weeks, we've covered a couple of arrests that have taken place in town here.
Yeah.
And in those 2 instances, a large amount of methamphetamine was recovered. In one instance, a woman was arrested and she had more than 100 grams of meth. You hear meth, you hear, just how dangerous it is. How big of a problem is this in your eyes here in San Angelo?
I think it's the number one struggle that we face as a community. If we from the day one, and I started pushing for a drug task force, and we are already through the MOUs and the whole process between the county and the city, and working in with DPS. We've got a facility that we're going to start using as the Drug Task Force Center. We're working with our federal counterparts, and I think it's the beginning, the foundational aspect of really a great offensive weapon. We partner right now as the San Angelo Police Department with DEA, and we have a lot of traction on cases that we've been able to make arrest on, but we get into a little bit different dynamic because we have to be particular on who and when we're going to talk about it, because almost every investigation leads to another one, and so we'll see at some point some level of big bust out where we get kind of all the way, we've exhausted all leads, and then we can talk about every case and how it breaks down. But it's not unusual for our team to get pounds because you can get into a lot of things no matter what your political leaning might be, but the open border was a huge problem, and that's just fact. And we've seen drugs be cheaper than methamphetamine in particular, cheaper than we've ever seen in my 23 years of law enforcement. So that means we have a flooded market. You talk about supply and demand, right? Whenever you have more supply than you have demand, then your prices will drop because everybody's competing. So that's why we see those prices. And so I'm hopeful. I think we got our best foot forward right now in merging that with a state, local, and county, city approach to fight drugs together and not be siloed. I think it's going to be a game changer.
You mentioned things, and it makes me think of more questions. You mentioned how the open border has been a major problem, and it's not just San Angelo in terms of drugs coming in. There's communities all over this country where I'm sure other police chiefs would say the open border really spurred a lot of drug sales and that in our town. You mentioned working with federal partners. I assume you are not in contact with the office, but the fact that the White House, the federal government right now, has a mandate to really crack down at the border, how do you think that could help you guys in your job to keep the flow of drugs off the street?
Well, I make sure that there's a delineation between, us getting involved. We're already strapped with resources, so when we run into federal violations, we're not going to shy away from turning that over to the federal authorities. But when we're already short on those resources, we're gonna be focusing right here. Now, when it comes to what that entails in regards to narcotics, we're going to definitely use those resources as best we can to get this terrible stuff off the streets. Right? I mean, we're seeing drug overdoses at levels that we typically don't see. We're seeing the abuse level of different ages and groups that we haven't seen. So, I mean, this is truly epidemic level problem. So anything we can do, partnering, whether that be with state or federal, we're going to do in regards to drugs all day long.
Chief, any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to pass along?
Yeah, I think in the middle of a world that sometimes feels like it's lost its mind, remind yourself of the good things you have in your life. It's easy to have your focus be on exterior things that are really outside of your control. So focus on what matters and realize that no matter what you're going through, it will pass. And if you remind yourself of the blessings and the things that are there, then the Bible says, from the heart the mouth speaks. When you're focused on those good things in your life, your words will come forth in a positive manner that will be uplifting to others and yourself.
You always have some wisdom at the end of these, and I absolutely love it.
Well, it's not me. I read some good stuff.
Chief, thank you as always for being here.
Sir, it's a blessing. Thanks.
West Texas, that'll do it for another episode of our VCast series, Chat with the Chief. I'm Burt Sempier. You've been hearing from San Angelo Police Chief Travis Griffith. Thank you for being a part of this episode, and we can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks from now.